I want to just single out a few guys that their overall season numbers don't necessarily pop, but I think they're going to be difference makers over this final month.
Okay, well, let's start off with a guy that has both hurt me and helped me immensely at the same time in fantasy hockey this year, and that is Connor Bedard.
Yeah, Connor Bedard. So it's weird to say I'm recommending Connor Bedard, but the reason why I'm bringing him up is he might be the only player who's not top 20 in his fantasy output this season who could be a top 20 player or even a top 10 player for the rest of the year. So in his last 15 games since returning from the broken jaw, he's got 20 points, 48 shots. So he's scoring at above a 100-point pace since he got back from that injury. So to me, he can be a real difference maker, and we might just see him perform at a superstar level, and he's going to parlay that into probably a massive breakout next season.
There'd be points where this year where he'd score 2 goals, and I'm like, yes, this is awesome. And then he'd be in the ice for 4 goals against. The Blackhawks will lose 7-2, and it's just like, okay, awesome. That didn't really work out, but yeah. Again, my league penalizes you for plus minus because I wanted to do something evil to make it really difficult, and that's what we did. So maybe not doing it next year because I hate the stat. Timo Meier.
Yes, Timo Meier, who's been one of the biggest busts of the season, but he hasn't been lately. He's very back, 9 goals in his last 12 games and 20% shooting. So again, that's sustainable. He has replaced Tyler Toffoli on the top power play unit since Toffoli was traded. He leads the league in goals since New Jersey switched coaches from Lindy Ruff to Travis Green. So he's clearly unlocked, and it makes sense. He's 27 years old. It's not like his talent disappeared. This version of Timo Meier is closer to the real Timo Meier than the one who was struggling at the beginning of the season. So to me, it's time. If you have him on your bench and he was frustrating you, it's absolutely time to keep him in your lineup now for the rest of the season.
So shout out to Scott Maxwell because I don't know, in our daily face-off chat, he was talking about how good Timo Meier has been from fantasy-wise. So shout out to him because it's been it's funny watching how many injuries that guy has had to deal with this year. Scott himself, that is. Playoff difference maker, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
Yes, it's crazy. So if you were to guess, Steven, where does the UPL rank in terms of fantasy goalies for the entire season?
Oh, 9th?
He's 4th.
Woo.
UPL has been on such a heater that it's not even a heater anymore. He's got a .930 save percentage since January 1st, 15 wins in 25 games since January 1st. And what's important is we have to stop kind of comparing him with the hype for Devin Levi. Oh, Devin Levi is the goalie of the future. People forget UPL's hype, his prospect pedigree was, I would argue, stronger than Devin Levi's at the time. When UPL first was coming up in the Sabres system, he was heralded on roughly the same level as, let's say someone like a Jesper Wallstedt today. Maybe not quite as generational in terms of the hype, but he was considered one of the 2 best prospects in net at his position when he was coming up. And I think we're just seeing him realize that. He's 25 years old. That's the age at which a lot of goaltenders come into their own. So maybe he's going to force Buffalo to consider trading Devin Levi in the offseason if he sees this net. But either way, he's just become an elite fantasy commodity. And I don't know if there are many goalies that I'd be starting over him right now during the fantasy playoffs.
Well, see, right now I have Thatcher Demko hurt, and then I have Georgiev as my other goalie, but he's not playing as much as he was because Colorado's like, oh yeah, we should also rotate goalies. What a concept. Because that was kind of the nice thing is always guaranteed points because he played so often, and now it's not as consistent. So I'm thinking here, okay, but then I got to drop somebody. I'm not dropping Demko. Although he's injured, so who knows? Do I drop Sidney Crosby to pick up Luukkonen here? I don't know. That's how good my team is right now. I'm literally having to decide between Jack Hughes, Vincent Trocheck, Sidney Crosby on a given night. Now it's that's a good spot to be in. Sticking with Buffalo, Bowen Byram.
Yeah, I think he is, obviously we've talked about him already on the show, but just in terms of being a difference maker down the stretch, we saw his ice time since the trade from Colorado to Buffalo. It's jumped by about 25. It's jumped by roughly 5 minutes a game, which is very significant. Playing on that top pair with Rasmus Dahlin. He had 5 points in his first 5 games. We know he's a major goal scoring threat at his position. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bowen Byram's a top 15 defenseman for the rest of the season in fantasy, maybe even top 10, just based on role, based on the fact he's healthy, the goal scoring ability, the fact that Buffalo is playing a lot of meaningful games right now and they seem to be really energized. So Byram is someone I think you want in your lineup for this stretch run.
All right, and going to a friend of his, I don't know, maybe a former friend of his. They're no longer teammates. Valerie Nichushkin.
Yeah. So when it comes to Nichushkin, first I want to apologize because there are several people, including Michael Bublé, sorry about it, that asked me if they should keep or hold on to Nichushkin or drop him when their
Right.
roster was they were in a bit of a roster crunch with injuries about a month ago or 2 months ago, and I said go ahead and drop him because I said the precedent for people who are in the player assistance program usually it takes them a long time to make it back. I did not expect Nichushkin to be back in the lineup before the end of the regular season. I thought he was going to make it maybe for the playoffs, so I didn't think he was going to be relevant in fantasy. So I'm sorry I made the wrong call. Anyone else who I gave that advice to, I'm not really sorry that I screwed Buble though. But either way, now we know Nichushkin, he's playing with Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen. He's got 47 points, including 25 goals in 44 games this season, 93 points in his last 97 games dating back to last year. So really fascinating career trajectory for someone who was really hyped as a first-round pick of the Dallas Stars, then was considered a total bust, then was considered a defensive specialist, and Colorado had found a role for him, and now all of a sudden he's blossoming into the offensive player he was always supposed to be. And he's only owned in 85% of leagues. What are these other leagues that don't own him? What are they doing? This guy needs to be on a team in every league because he's better than a point per game player. He's going to be very useful for the fantasy playoffs, especially playing on that top line in Colorado.